Hello, I'm Ellen Vandermeide, Head of Enrichment Programs for the Kirk Newman Art School, and it is my pleasure to introduce to you today Daniel Isacksen. Daniel Isacksen is our current sculpture resident. He is a graduate of Kalamazoo College with a BA in studio art and biology. He is an interdisciplinary artist interested in recontextualizing materials and incorporating social awareness into his work. And now I would like to invite Daniel up to the podium.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Thank you all for being here. It's great to see such familiar faces today. My name is Daniel Isacksen. I am the sculpture resident here at the Kirk Newman Art School. And today I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I've been up to this year, processes I've been working on, and talk a little bit then about subject matter that I've been getting interested in and how I've worked through that this year and how that's developing. So I'm going to start with a little background on myself for those who don't know. I'm a proud graduate of Kalamazoo Public Schools, born and raised here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Here's a lovely photo of me in 9th grade as part of the Jeter's Leaders Program, which is a youth leadership and education program here in Kalamazoo, Michigan and New York City. I'm a graduate of Kalamazoo College. While I was there, I served on the board of our Students for Justice in Palestine as an event coordinator. And I was a volunteer and organizer with the Arca Center of Social Justice and Leadership. When I got to college, I hadn't done much art, but I took a painting class my first trimester on campus, and I had a great time. So I took a couple more, and I fell in love with art and decided I was going to make it my major. So through college, I worked with a couple different mediums. I experimented with photography while on study abroad, and as most artists, did some drawing, and I also became interested in mat cutting and framing. And my junior year, I did this piece for fun. This is a repurposed sports score or announcer table, if you can imagine that, on the side of maybe a basketball court. I took out the logo and repainted over this with pictures of me and my roommates for just a cool little bar to have in our house. And I really loved this piece. It was really new for me. I've never done something this big before, and it was a little different. It's still painting, but felt more sculptural in a way. And one part that I really liked about it was the light. I felt like having the light coming through incorporated the art or the piece into the space more than some of the 2D work I'd been doing before. So that inspired me to try out stained glass. I've been doing stained glass for about 2 years now. I would say it was my main focus for my senior year, along with a couple other small things. But I really fell in love with light and glass for a few reasons. One, caustics. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term caustics. It's essentially the reflected and refracted light that comes through transparent and translucent objects. And specifically, you may have seen this in this example with a glass cup, or maybe you've seen this at the bottom of a pool, those kind of shimmering you see from the surface. And I thought those were so cool because it can be so organic, it can be so sharp. You can see where things are overlapping here and creating a really precise pattern. And at the base of the cup there where it's really disorganized, organic, and I thought that was really beautiful. I also love the colors. This is a lovely photo of my roommate, Eamon. He's sitting in some light coming through one of my stained glass windows. So I love how As I said earlier, the light can interact with the space more than the piece itself and really change the whole atmosphere. And also interested in other aspects of the materiality of glass. For example, glass is very hard, but it's also very brittle. It can be transparent, translucent, or opaque. It can, when it shatters, all these little cracks can change how light goes through it. It can be sharp, just all such a unique material in my point of view. And I also found interest in the context that I observed stained glass and glass art in. Historically, in my experience, I've mostly encountered stained glass in contexts related to religion or wealthier contexts. And so my senior year, I was really interested in trying to reshape how people interact with this medium that I'd fallen in love with by making some functional objects here, a bedside table and a jewelry box. And I really enjoyed that process. I enjoyed trying to recontextualize stained glass. So I knew that coming into present day at the residency, I was interested in continuing my work with glass. But coming into the sculpture residency, I knew I wanted to do it in a little different way, push myself to work in a 3D way with this material and find out how that was going to fit within the sculpture studio here, which is centered around a lot of metal and metal art. So at the beginning of the residency, I started doing some experimenting just with materials I had around my studio, and I was really drawn to just regular window pane glass. Soda lime glass has this greenish aquamarine tint to it as you compound it. So that compounding can either happen face to face, the direction you would look through a pane of glass, or as this example shows, through the side of a piece of glass. And I really loved that color, so that was inspiring to me. And so I started experimenting with what could I do with this layering? How can I make images appear and disappear by placing them between these sheets of glass pressed together? This was a little test tile I did with just some paint. And as you can see, very visible on the face, but once you get to the side, it becomes 2D essentially, and you kind of lose that image. The other thing I was noting about this glass is that there was a large difference between the freshly broken and scored unsanded glass edge versus the sanded edge. So this is an example of some edges of glass, panes of glass that are freshly cut. You can see kind of uneven rippling, but light passing through pretty smoothly, in contrast to a more sanded edge, which has more dispersed light, a little foggier, a little milkier. And so I was wondering then, okay, how can I play with this idea as well? And what I landed on was an idea of kind of working in a reverse process to my normal stained glass steps. When you're making stained glass, you cut the piece out of a piece of glass. And so I thought, how can I invert that? What does that do when looking through the side of the piece of glass versus through the front, like I showed in those previous examples? So I started developing this process that starts with a 3D model. I do modeling and 3D design for my job, so I happen to have access to the software necessary to do this. I started with a high heel. Here's a picture of the model here in the app called SketchUp. And essentially what my idea was to take this 3D model of a shoe and almost like an MRI, slice it into these 1/8" pieces representing the 1/8" of the real life glass thickness, and to transpose the image of that slice onto the sheet of glass. I ended up using a water jet to cut those precise shapes without shattering the glass. So my idea was then by layering the glass, I could build it back up to be the 3D object shown within these individual planes. Now, taking a step back here, why shoes? Coming into the residency, I really wanted to push myself on the theoretical side of my art. Luckily, I had great mentors and all of the staff and students and residents here to help me work through my ideas. And at the beginning of the residency, I had been downtown one day in Kalamazoo, and I was noticing a lot of discarded clothing objects, including shoes. The unhoused population in Kalamazoo is something I was passionate about, so I thought, what stories here? How can this be shared? And it had me starting to think about how shoes can tell a story about their past or their wearer based on their context, their appearance, and what type of shoe they are. So I'm going to show you guys just a couple images of some shoes here, and I want you to think to yourself, what about the shoe is special to you? What does it make you think of? Who does it make you think of? So as you're thinking about maybe who would be wearing this shoe, or how is the context affecting your perception of the shoes or the wearers of the shoes, or if you have preconceived notions about what the shoe means, or even if there is a historical context. I'm going to tell two quick little stories here that I learned from my research. The first, going back about 400 years to when high heels were primarily worn by men. I did not know this, but it used to be a sign of status, and you could only wear heels if you were noble. The higher the heel, the more noble you were. And of course, as the patriarchy does, it was decided that these shoes were actually irrational, and so who should be wearing the irrational shoes but women? And so fast forward, high heels become the shoes primarily worn by women. And now in modern day, even more layers, we have the context of specifically the bright red, super tall heel, high heel, that exists both as a symbol of objectification of women and also as a symbol that has been reclaimed as something that is powerful, specifically, I think in our Western context, through the framing of capitalism or in your career. The second story that was interesting to me came from a friend of mine, Malik Lowe, who is a Senegalese filmmaker and storyteller. Malik studied abroad in Kalamazoo for a couple of years, and I had the privilege to meet him during that time, in which he gave me a gift of shoes that look a little bit like this. I would call these shoes maybe jelly sandals. Maybe some of you guys recognize these, but I didn't know much about them. They were really foreign to me and not necessarily something that I would see myself wearing for any reason. But Malik shared a really interesting history and contextual story with me about these shoes that was inspiring and relevant to my thought process. He explained that in Senegal and the Ivory Coast, these shoes became widely available after World War II during a time period where plastic was being produced, and the shoes became readily available and cheap. They're also fairly durable, so they naturally became a staple of specifically those two countries. And over time, even as new shoes were produced and maybe these shoes fell out of fashion, those two cultures and countries held on to the shoe as a sign of cultural pride and as a sign of humility, even to the point where, specifically in soccer, professional Senegalese players will often practice, or even in their kits and uniforms, wear these shoes. And he explained to me how this shoe is not necessarily always worn out of necessity anymore, but to show your solidarity with your countrymen and their history. So these stories and this research and these thoughts about what shoes can tell you about a person, what biases you might have towards the wearer based on their shoes, really starting to frame my show. And so I'm excited to continue working with both my experimental medium, keep pushing that to see where I can go with that, and learning more about the history of shoes and how they're intertwined with our cultural and understanding of one another. So going forward, I'm excited to see where that'll take me, and I want to give a big shout out to everyone who's helped me, especially Brent, for being someone I can always talk to about these ideas. Really, really great to bounce ideas off him. And of course, all the residents and other mentors that we've had here. So thank you very much.
So it's really great to have you here focused on shoes during this particular exhibition that we have called Future Now. And I really enjoyed that you spent a bit of time kind of researching, and I know you've been kind of doing that research and traveling and thinking. And it looks like perhaps the culmination of your work here is focused on obviously your interest in glass and experimentation with materials and thinking a bit about the concept. And there's a couple things. One, are you thinking that after this work you want to continue to focus on shoes and some of the social aspects of that, and what do you see sort of coming out of like future works? So, and then secondly, I just saw, as we all did, the flash of the glass shoe, and my immediate thought went glass slipper. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about those two things. First thing, focused on, do you see yourself continuing down the path of sort of the social commentary around shoes? And then secondly, can you tell us a little bit about this piece?
Yeah, so I think for me, shoes are just a good window into the stuff that I would like to draw attention to or talk about. I think it's yet to be seen whether I'll continue with it in this way or if I'll find another, vessel to continue that conversation. I think there's a lot left on the table for me to learn and to explore with this, so I could see myself going forward sticking with the metaphor of shoes. And as for these two specific ones, these are the positive and negative versions of a high heel. I think that high heels are such a strong visual cue, especially in our society. And I think there's a lot of important context and connotation that a lot of people draw from this imagery. And so I thought that was a great place to start while venturing into these new ideas that I'm exploring. Yeah.
Your conceptual work is really strong and intriguing, and I like where your mind goes with that. But also the passion you have towards materiality of glass itself. And I was really drawn to those images you had. They almost seem like finished products in and of themselves. They're so interesting to see, because glass at all is all imagery is so finished and formed and clean. Did you ever consider doing any investigation, sort of like the materiality of glass itself as well?
Yeah, for sure. The question was about investigating the materiality of glass. And I think while doing those test tiles, I was almost satisfied with some of the results that they produced on their own just as the stacked glass. And I think either at scale or by playing with lighting, there's definitely a lot to explore there. I think going forward, some future things I will be exploring are stuff more with caustics, which I haven't got to play enough with, how I can arrange glass to bend light in ways that either could produce image or shape that is interesting or thought-provoking. And I think especially just the stacked glass itself with these raw edges provides, especially at scale, a really interesting kind of reflection of the things, both reflecting off it from behind or through it, and these things kind of overlap in a interesting way. So yeah, definitely, I think there's a lot left to experiment here, and I'm excited that I haven't gotten through it all this year. There's a lot to look forward to. Yeah.
I feel like I've gotten to know your process of thinking about art and
little bit about how you enjoy like thinking about like brand new ideas, and then how it compares when you see them come to life. Like I think it seems like you really enjoy thinking about new ideas, thinking about materiality, and like how the idea plays out in your head, and then seeing what it looks like in real life. Like this project with the glass slipper, deal, I think really did turn out, I think, the way you thought it would, which I think speaks to how much you did like think about it critically to make it work. But is it ever kind of like disappointing to see stuff not work out? I think it's gonna, is it sometimes maybe more fun to just come up with these ideas and not always have them work out? Like that.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of this was just an experiment for me, and it kind of happened through the timeline of this residency. And so luckily I've come out the other side with a couple pieces which I'm excited to show and are finished in a way that I'm confident sharing. But I also think, that's just kind of how stuff goes. I mean, some things don't always work out, and it's honestly more exciting to think about what you could have done different and how it's going to change in the future. There's definitely some pieces in this upcoming show that I will be revisiting, maybe not in the exact same way, but at least expanding on the technique and seeing if I can refine it, avoid some mistakes that happened along this last 9-month process.
Are you working exclusively in class right now? I think I saw a different piece of yours too, in bronze maybe.
Yeah. So as I said, our sculpture studio here focuses a lot with metal art. So that was definitely something I was excited to learn about coming here, and have been able to learn a lot of metal finishing and welding skills that are incorporated in with both the glass pieces and on their own in some cast objects as well. Yeah.
I appreciate the use of materials for the specific subject matter that you're choosing, right? So you have these heels with glass that both can be described as strong but also fragile, and are associated with feminine traits currently, but maybe historically not. Maybe these are these like slices historically we're seeing the context of these shoes, and then you had more of a masculine shoe in bronze and the strength and durability of that, and the associations. I think it plays a lot of what you talked about today, but I think you do a very good job choosing which material and which subject matter for that material.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's definitely a large part of the process, and also deciding how much to leave up to viewer interpretation, and how, I'm glad to see that you're picking up on things that you think are interesting, going back and forth between the material and the subject matter. So thank you.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate your talking about the social and political context of your work and the materials. And that shoe just looks so painful. It makes me wonder if you have ever worn high heels for the check.
I have worn high heels before, not for long enough to hurt myself, but I imagine I was looking at this photo, which I chose specifically because those look so painful. Yeah, not for me. All right, thank you so much, guys.